Hi, I'm Gail Matthews. After being a caregiver for my husband with Alzheimer's for over 7 years, I decided to create a website containing videos covering all aspects of the disease. Together, we can erase the stigma associated with Alzheimer's and the other 92 dementias. In addition to the website, I wrote the book, Did I Die?, to discuss the journey my husband and I experienced. If you find the following videos informative, please check out the website to find more videos. The first video features Carlton Bradford, who started to realize his beloved wife Maggie had dementia when she began to give up things she loved. The dementia was later diagnosed as Alzheimer's. Carlton, how did you know that Maggie had dementia? What were the signs?
It was denial in my case for quite a long period of time. I would say the whole thing started almost 10 years, and the last 5 years were not as, were more obvious, and the last 3 years, more and more until 2 years and then 1 year. The last year being the hard year.
It's exactly the way Glenn's was.
Is that right? Yeah. And she gave up the thing she loved the most, which was helping one of the local school teachers in a reading program at the elementary school, first graders. And she gave that up one day. And then not too long after that, she was a very active member of her church, and she helped count the money every Sunday morning after the collection. And one day she came home and said that she had to give that up because she was making mistakes and they couldn't do that. That was another thing that she gave up. And I think the most final thing was when she gave up doing our checkbook. And she did the bookkeeping for a local doctor.
And for your business.
And for our business for years,
Yes.
of course. But then that was before she started with Alzheimer's. We retired
Right.
In '92, and so she was fine then. But yeah, she gave up doing our checkbook and working for the doctor, and that's when I knew we were in trouble. And
Did you take her to a doctor?
we went to a doctor, of course, and the diagnosis it's kind of interesting to me. They told me that there were all kinds of dementias, and Alzheimer's was only one of them.
There are 92. 92 dementias.
92. Okay, I didn't know that, and Alzheimer's was only one of them, and so she was always diagnosed with dementia, and it wasn't really until towards the very end that they changed the diagnosis and actually considered it Alzheimer's, and her death certificate said Alzheimer's on it.
Maggie was such a force in the community, and she is sorely missed, not only by Carlton, by a whole group of people. I sat down with Gail Bates to talk about how I learned to live in the moment and continue to live life to the fullest when my husband was diagnosed, because the caregiver has to stay healthy.
Gail, I had asked you a while back if you had gone through a grieving process when you first got that diagnosis and you first had the news that Glenn had Alzheimer's. And you had said to me that no, you didn't, that you jumped right into trying to make the best of it. What exactly did you?
Well, you have to know how we were as a couple. It was always a can-do attitude. You always turned something. We started with $18 on our company. No capital, no venture capital, no anything, and 2 little boys. And so every time through our whole married life, it was all about a project, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it never occurred to me that we wouldn't have a good outcome on Alzheimer's. And so I didn't grieve. I had work to do. I had to make sure we moved along. And as I got deeper into the disease, and it is a disease after all, that you don't ask for, you just have to do what you can to make things better and all right. And I wanted us to live as normal a life as possible, the same as Carlton wanted Maggie and to live. So no, I didn't grieve. Maybe I'm going to grieve later. Maybe I was too naive about what I was getting into. It certainly is tough. The other thing, Gail, I want to say is that, and this happens in all married lives, I think, that one partner takes care of the other if there's true love, and the other partner takes care of the other. And I adored Glenn. I still do. And he took care of me through 2 bouts of lung cancer. And mind you, I never smoked. So talk about coming out of left field to be diagnosed with lung cancer. It was just amazing. And he just got me through that. And I felt like it was my privilege to try as best I could to get him through Alzheimer's, because we were going to get through it and there was going to be a cure. And I dragged him to so many doctors you wouldn't believe it, because we were going to get the cure. Yeah. And you know, at the end of his life, I was busy selling stuff so that I could afford to keep him at home comfortably, because the expenses were so outrageous. And you know, I was just prepared to go on and on and on. And that isn't what the plan was.
Yeah. So what did you really wanted each day to be the best day that it could?
That's all you don't know what tomorrow's going to be. A moose could hit your car. You could be in the hospital tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. You know, none of us know. We have the moment. And I want to make it the best moment that I can. God didn't give me a plan when I was born saying, you're going to live to be, I mean, should have gone with lung cancer. That's a lethal disease. But Glenn is the one that got it early enough. And because I got it early enough, you know, that's 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So you learn to live with the moment. And I think at your young age, that's the best thing you could learn, is be of the moment. Be mindful. Be mindful of the moment. It is very important for the caregiver to stay healthy mentally and physically, because then she or he can be very useful to the one they love. One man who lives in the moment is Charles Collier. When Charles was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, he became involved in the Cure Alzheimer's Fund, which has the highest rating from the charity Navigator, helping to search for a cure.
Before we get started, let me offer a quote. "The only constant in our lives is change. I have a lot of change because I have Alzheimer's. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. My challenge is that every year, even with the drugs that we have available, my functioning is getting worse. But I'm a fighter, and I'm leaning into this challenge. I've come to the conclusion that all of us will have challenges in our lives. We are all dealt a hand of cards in life. Some of it is good, some of it is not so good. The best way to think about it is this: how am I going to react to the cards that I've been dealt? I was sending out my retirement notice because of my Alzheimer's to my Harvard clients. And Phyllis immediately called me and then said, "You have got to meet the folks at Cure Alzheimer's Fund." My first impression is that Henry and Phyllis are remarkable people who get things done. I knew that they were on to something new. I needed to get acquainted with how important this fund is for supporting important research which will and could make a difference to a person with Alzheimer's. And that's me. 100% of my donation is going to research that I hope is going to find a cure for Alzheimer's. The money goes to the best researchers to support their important work into the causes of the disease. Every minute, there's one baby boomer that's been told that they have Alzheimer's. The country needs to wake up to this. When my friends and family hear about my donation and volunteering, they typically don't know anything about Alzheimer's or about the fund, but I'm talking it up. I support the fund because they are trying to tackle this illness. I believe the cure is going to be done, and I hope it's soon. I'm taking control of Alzheimer's.
Charles is an example of advocacy for everyone. And everyone reacts differently to knowing someone with Alzheimer's. It's very important to be grateful to those who are there to support you, but don't hold bitterness against those who can't handle the situation as well. Relationships change during the disease. It is said that cancer and Alzheimer's can either bring you closer or put you apart. And I will tell you one thing. Your dog, your cat, will just give you that unconditional love that you need when the times are tough. And sometimes someone who's close to you will not be there for you because they can't handle the disease. Do not hold bitterness in your heart. Understand that that's their choice and you move on. And be grateful for the people, the friends, anyone that's in your life who will send you a card or pick up the phone and say, "How are you doing?" or bring you a meal or stop by and see your loved one and yourself. And just be grateful for that. I was lucky in my life to have my sister, my brother, and their spouses. And my sister's spouse happened to know Glenn longer than I did. And they let me grieve, and they let me talk, and they were there for us all the time. And they were never hesitant to take him into a restaurant and just explain to people that, you know, he has a memory problem and we'll order for him. So we handled it that way. And I find that if people understand what your wishes are, they'll be there for you and they'll help you. But don't hold bitterness. Dogs are just the best. Scott Fabry discussed what families can do when a loved one is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and the resources that are available for support. Scott, the reason I'm doing this filming is because I felt when Glenn got the diagnosis that I was in an isolation booth. And I would like to make it easier for people who get that diagnosis because it's devastating. It's, as my husband said, "Did I die?" It's a loss of self. It's a foggy brain. There are the symptoms, and then it isn't losing your car keys. It's not knowing what your car keys are for. Mm-hmm. How do you help someone with that diagnosis, the caregiver? How do you help the family? How do you help the patient? Do they automatically go to a visiting nurse association such as Lake Sunapee, or what do we do?
Well, with the visiting nurses, a lot of times what happens is people kind of come in and out of our care as the disease progresses because they may have other complications from the disease. They're more likely to fall. They're more likely to have pneumonia. So people with Alzheimer's do tend to come in and out of our home care division. The other thing that they come to the visiting nurses for is what we call chronic care or long-term care, where people go in the house for blocks of time, to provide either hands-on care or just supervision and companionship. And I think that's very necessary for a caregiver or a family of somebody suffering from the disease, because as we said before, it's a 24/7, 365 day a year illness, and you really have to be like a sentry on guard and ready, for whatever comes your way, whether it's wandering or aggressive behavior. So the best way that I think the best way for a family who, when you first receive that diagnosis, I think the first thing you do is I would recommend you go to the web, and you can go to alzheimers.org. It's alz.org. It's a tremendous resource. There's all sorts of information on both Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's written in plain language. It's not written in med speak. I would say that's the first step. The second step would be to look and see what your local resources are. Alzheimers.org has chapters throughout this country where caregivers get together and support each other. And I think that's very, very important because you have somebody who's speaking your language. I can offer you support and I can offer you empathy, but I have never cared for anybody with Alzheimer's, so I can't really offer you advice. And in a sense, I'm not a kindred spirit as I would be if my dad had Alzheimer's and I was taking care of him. So it's very important to get familiar with the disease initially, and to get connected with a caregiver support group. Now, our VNA has a local caregiver support group as well, and most of the people who attend that are caregivers for people with Alzheimer's.
The visiting nurses are a vital asset for any community and provide services from birth until death. Another agency that is terrific, Shirley Kimball from Home Instead Agency, discusses how caregivers can do it all, from caring for their loved ones to continuing to live their everyday lives. What do you advise people who are in the caregiving role to do? Because you have your home to take care of, your children, your grandchildren maybe, your animals if you have animals, your patient is number one, and how do you do it all?
The primary caregiver, you mean? Yeah, that primary. You have to take care of yourself, though. You have to take care of yourself because there's so much of you that is going in all different directions that you must. And then that's where hiring a company to come in, like Home Instead Senior Care, the hospice companies, we work hand in hand with you on your schedule and help you achieve what you want. And it gives you more quality time. As you know, at the end of Glenn's life, the time we worked out, the schedule that we worked out between the office, our staff worked out to give you those prime times with you and your son to be with Glenn. That's
Yes, you respect our privacy and you respected Glenn's dignity. And something that was very important that we should bring out is the fact that the disease hits as you get older. I'm 75 and my knees were wearing out taking care of Glenn. I needed to have
physically
somebody,
and mentally.
Yes, I needed someone to help me, and he was 185 pounds, 6'2", and
But that goes
I couldn't
back
have done it
to
all by myself when he was bedridden totally.
right now. But if you remember our training sessions,
Yes.
that is the number one thing I must say about Home Instead Senior Care is our training is intense. We're a non-medical company, but yet everybody knows exactly the compassion, the hands-on that is needed, and we're willing to train the family members.
You trained me.
We work together on
Yes,
that because
yes,
it takes more than one person.
Well, the other thing that, I don't know if people know this, but it was certainly a surprise for me. It was in Rhode Island and it was in New Hampshire that only an RN or the spouse can give any of the pills, even vitamin pills. That's the law.
State of New Hampshire.
Well, that was Rhode Island too. My sister is a nurse.
Some states are different, but yes.
So people have to perhaps have an RN on staff if they can't be the spouse that gives the medicine. And I always thought that was so stupid because I know very little about medicine, yet the people that came in from Home Instead knew a whole lot about it. Now, isn't that a crazy law?
It is a crazy law, but there's reasons because there are lots of times more family members involved, and they always seem to look for something maybe. So there are protection laws to there's reasons for those laws. But yes, I think when it comes to end of life, a lot of things could change, and that would be one of them. It was like waking you up at 2 o'clock in the morning because it was time to give him medication that he really needed. You were exhausted. That, I mean, I'm just using that as one of
And
the
what if
examples.
I made a mistake? Luckily, I had someone to oversee me. We in New Hampshire are very blessed to have many resources available to us. While acting as a caretaker, Sally McIntosh stresses the importance of doing things for yourself and having an emotional outlet.
It depends on where you are in what you need to do for any individual. And I know that what is coming for me is that the only thing I can change is that I don't have to work. Now, I realize that I need to do things for myself. I'm going to have to get more focused on exercising, on making sure that I take care of myself in order to be able to be there for the people who need me. What you need to do on a daily basis, I'm realizing, is that you must do things for yourself. You must take time for yourself. Exercise is tremendously important. Obviously, eating well is important, but you need to be in contact with friends. You need to make sure that you have outside sources of stimulation and interest, just as the people that you're caring for need them. You need that emotional outlet. It becomes a huge source of support.
Sally is just a trooper, and you have to be. While caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's, it can be difficult to go about daily tasks. Cheryl discussed the importance of respite for both the caregiver and for the patient. Cheryl, what is the value of respite for the family and the patient? Because I think it's important for both of them. Maybe one more than the other, but I think they're very important.
And I think you touched on a few important things, and I think partially you need to be comfortable with leaving your loved one at a site that's unknown to you. You already trust the agency. You need to trust me. And I think that it gives you a chance, or any caregiver, a chance to go and pay their bills, do their errands, not to feel that their loved one is waiting in the car, possibly with them and embarrassing them, or
Getting lost.
Wandering was my next thing. I think it's also very important that the safety of the patient be considered. I try to do emotional things with them to help them through their emotional times. So it's a two-way street. Actually, it's a three-way street. It's myself, it's the patient, and the caregiver, all feeling
And
comfortable.
I felt it was very important for Glenn as well as myself, because here is a social man who ran a company, had a lot of employees, was out giving lectures and taking care of his company, and then it's down to maybe a nurse and myself taking care of him.
Absolutely.
And basically myself for 7 years. But he goes to the respite for a little social,
Right.
of people that will not judge him.
That's correct. And we do not judge him. We do not make mention of his memory issues or his downfalls at that time. We praise him for his ability to run a company, to be knowledgeable. Baseball was a highlight for some people as well as for Glenn. And I think that that's what I try to do. I get a little knowledge about what each client or patient used to do, and I kind of praise them constantly, bring them in the conversation, and make them feel like that's the only thing that's important at that time.
Cheryl is an angel in our community, and I hope everyone, wherever you are, has a Cheryl. She is terrific, and another terrific helper, and just my sister, Lynn Carnathan. She believes society has placed stigmas against mental diseases, including Alzheimer's, for years. But as more people become diagnosed and more research is conducted, things might be starting to change. We have to get the word out.
Well, I think as a society, we don't address issues of mental health in a comfortable manner. Maybe as a society evolves, it will become more natural and more normal. But if you really think back a little bit to people who were born with developmental disabilities were hidden away in institutions. It was only since the 1970s that they've been actually out and about in the community. I think that people don't understand mental health. They look at it as something that somebody could be able to control or change, when it's really biological and physical reaction changes in the brain that cause a lot of mental health issues. And some of it, of course, is genetics too. And I think Alzheimer's definitely has to be looked at as a mental health issue. And I think maybe there is some light on the horizon. I think as baby boomers age, and they're beginning to, and more people have Alzheimer's, that more and more money will be funded in that direction. It needs to be funded for research. I don't think there's anything. I mean, I think there is research going on by all means, and people really want to find a cure for this disease because it's debilitating to the person, it's financially debilitating, it's debilitating to a society, and it's happening to younger people. As I said, my brother-in-law was 59, and I know people in their 40s with Alzheimer's. So there has to be a reason. I know that some people think it's genes, and some people think it's diet and exercise and lifestyle. And you can read copious amounts of information on what you can do to change the possibility that you might develop Alzheimer's. But in the long run, and one brother-in-law did all of that, and in the long run, it didn't matter. The disease actually conquered him, which is very sad. But I think as a society, we need to address the issue of mental health and have people gain more knowledge so that they're more comfortable. People aren't comfortable with behavior that isn't normal. Whether it's someone with Down syndrome or someone with Alzheimer's or an older person with dementia or a woman with schizophrenia who, believes that she's seeing things and has a lump on her head. It sends people running. They scurry away from the disease. And I think the more education that our society has, the more welcoming people will be, and maybe the funding will be there.
I adore my sister, and I am so proud of the work she is doing to help the mentally challenged. I'm lucky to have her in my corner. There is currently no cure for Alzheimer's, as you probably know, but together we can stop the stigma associated with the disease. Please check out my website for more informative videos such as the ones you saw today, and thank you for watching. Stay well, stay healthy, and God bless.